Get her done. It shouldn't be a challenge at all.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. Welcome to the morning show where we come together to kickstart your day. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, and of course, we've got the panel, the Clubhouse panel already in today. We've got Martinez Rory from Nashville. What's up, man?
Good morning, Nashville.
I was about to say, we're going with some Robin Williams. I like it.
Yeah, that's great, man. I was like,
boom.
It's good to be here one more time.
Come on.
One more time.
Try me one more time, Lord.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. One more time. This is the day that the Lord has made. We
Watch
will
him.
rejoice and be glad in it.
Oh, he's on fire today. We've also got joining with us Chelsea Rushing from Bristol, Virginia. What's up, Chelsea?
Good morning.
How you doing?
Sunshine.
Oh, I am absolutely amazing. Today starts my vacation, so
What? You vacating? Chelsea, what are you going to do?
Oh my gosh. Jealous.
we are leaving today to go to Tybee Island, Georgia,
Okay.
Cool.
to the beach for the next 5 days.
Nice.
Oh my gosh.
Are you a beach bum, Chelsea?
I absolutely am. This is my favorite place to be.
That's awesome. Well, congrats. I hope you guys have a fun, safe time and get all the R&R you can. I love it.
Absolutely.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, yeah, who was that? Oh, I thought somebody said, hey.
I thought Chelsea did. But I wonder how far the drive is that down there, or are they flying? I mean, I don't know, but
No, it's only 6 hours from us. It would probably be shorter for you guys. It's not that bad.
oh, that's nice. So the weather looks good for the next 5 days down there.
Yeah, it's not going to be hot, but I don't care if it rains. I just need a vacation.
Right.
Do you prefer it be hot? Do you like the hot weather?
Yeah, I'd rather it be hot so that I can enjoy the water, but
Oh, right, I understand.
it'll be okay. Either way, I'm good.
I know, right?
I was about to say, it's going to be good, no matter what. That's awesome. That's awesome. I see jumping in the club as well. We've got Lucian Linkus from Nashville, Tennessee. What's up, Lucian?
In the house. Good morning. For the duty call, so I'm deal some stuff at work.
Understood.
Good.
Just trying to make things happen. I like it. I like it.
Wouldn't
Cool.
be a man if he wasn't.
That's right. That's right. Well, y'all just want to kind of open the floor up this morning. As you know, maybe you're watching this for the first time. Basically, the morning show is a conversation that is all about stirring up your mind, your dreams, your goals, your desire, all those things to get you kick-started for the day. And we do that by merely talking about things that matter to us, things that are on our mind, things that we're thinking about, learning about. That's why it's so important and so fun to have everyone on the Clubhouse portion, because that's where the real interaction happens. So if you've not joined Clubhouse or you need an invite to Clubhouse, you need to hit us up. Matter of fact, you can text that number 615-908-3067. We'll get you hooked up with a Clubhouse account so you can be a part of the panel in the morning and join the conversation. But anyways, I'm just laying this before you all. Anybody have something you specifically are thinking about, maybe you wanted to talk about? I want to give everyone that opportunity to kind of speak into, hey, this could be the narrative for the day. Not everyone at once now. Bueller. Nothing at all. No topics. No anything y'all are thinking about.
I would imagine somebody's got something.
Might as well be you, right, Martinez?
Well, you know what? I was just thinking about like patterns, like how there's a pattern in the seasons, there's a pattern and to the day.
Mhm.
You know, that it never changes. You know, the sun. You know, there's a pattern. There's a divine pattern. There's a ecological pattern that it. You know, there's 4 seasons. There's there's night and day. There's you can foresee the pattern that rain will come with the clouds and that kind of stuff. So I was thinking, okay, if patterns help us because it helps us perceive things, it helps us like know when to expect things, and it also helps us get through things. And I was just thinking, we spend a lot of time. I'm making a large jump right now from patterns to is there like a patterns in life as it relates to like how to be happy, how to be productive, how to be and this and that. But specifically, I said to myself, man, a lot of us, there's probably we probably spend a lot of time being in pain or suffering or crying or whatever. And I was thinking, is there a pattern to deal with pain so that people don't spend 10, I heard people spend years in pain, like, or for example, the pain of having been offended. And so for years, they avoid a person or a certain situation. And they've wasted 10 years of negative energy.
Mhm.
And I was thinking, is there a pattern to avoid, to overcome pain of any kind so that you can just move forward and have a productive life?
Mm.
Does it make sense?
Let me say this. I think I love this conversation. Okay. It's actually like, and I'll share this one day, but I have like this framework that I kind of work off of that I guess you would call it my philosophy or whatever you want to call it. And part of it is time and understanding seasons in your life. And the thing about that is seasons, like you just said, they're patterns. And the thing about a season is, all right, let's relate this to life. Well, let's start with practical, right? We know that we've got, summer, fall, winter, spring. Okay. Those you can count on, right? Those you understand there. You even got,
Right.
In other words, that season, you have the expectation of how long it will last. And you have the ability to plan the activities that you do. For instance, you go agricultural. You just know that there's the season to plant and there's the time to harvest and then there's the time to rest, right? You've got that really and truly it would be plant, preserve, harvest, rest, right? And so you just know those activities, it'd be bad to try to break up the ground in the middle of winter expecting to get something. You know what I mean? I don't know a ton about farming and all of that. I'm just simply saying the analogy. But here's the one, and I think we all get those. But here's the ones that I think that's difficult because I don't know that there's necessarily a pattern as much as there is a point. And that, like what you just said, dealing with maybe personal hurt, maybe dealing with personal adversity. It's about the seasons that you don't have a full, clear deadline. You know what I'm saying? Like when it comes to a spring or a summer, right? I know my time here, but like with a hurt, I think that's at that point, I think you're going to be in that season as long as you want to, or maybe better yet, as long as you're willing not to learn the lesson. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, and I get there being pain and hurt associated with, like certain pains and hurts are different than
Mhm.
other pains.
Right,
like,
right.
Like the passing of a loved one.
Right.
That there's there's a pattern of that. I mean, that it's a more definitive, and some people do mourn over a lifetime over a passing of someone, but typically, there's a beginning of that pain and there's an ending of that pain, and you kind of move forward. And you never, not to say you don't ever miss that person, but the other pain and hurt that's less definitive is someone where someone wronged you or offended you, or and they did something, they betrayed you.
Right.
Like it's like, how do you what's the pattern to getting over that hurt? Because guess what? If the more you kind of languish it, the less productive you are. You can't get on in your life, and then a lot of times other people are victims of your pain. And so anyway.
Yeah.
I'll let someone else
Okay.
talk.
I think, can I chime in?
Absolutely, please.
Chelsea chimes in.
So I think it's definitely a subjective approach, meaning everyone is going to process that differently.
Right.
Sometimes hurt for people can cause anger, which inspires passion. Sometimes anger just isn't like being angry at everybody. It's what causes us to tick and go on and move forward. Yeah, I do think that we need to heal from those things, but I think that's kind of on your own timing. So my question for you, Martinez, would be, what is your pattern? And what could we learn from you?
Leave me alone, Chelsea.
Let me say this. I knew once we went there, I knew the counselor was going to have something to add on this.
I thought you were going on vacation.
I thought you were going on vacation.
No, I mean, there's no right or wrong answer or no right or wrong way to do it. I mean, I think,
Hey,
we can all learn.
Can I throw out an analogy? This is just something that hit me, okay? Because Chelsea, you were exactly like, I do believe like everyone, it's very subjective, right? There's some people, man, they move on. Other people, whatever, and this could be, like I said, hurt, happiness, disappointment, like these emotional categories, right? Well, I think it's kind of like this is the way I'm kind of perceiving it, right? Because, by the way, having that hurt doesn't necessarily make somebody right or wrong. It's something that they're battling. I mean, granted, I think there is a point, like, for instance, you can make something wrong, like anything, right? You can make eventually something wrong. But what I'm merely saying is, okay, let's just make it subjective and put it in the terms of money, okay? Let's say when you get hit or you have a baggage, or let's say this, okay, having emotional built up pain, regret, disappointment, whatever, let's equate it to debt, right? When you have debt, you pay interest on that debt. What I mean is debt costs you something, whether it's a little, a lot, whatever those terms are. But here's the thing I think we all are going to do. We're all going to pay that debt off differently. Some people are going to, that's all they're going to work on. They're going to get it done. Others, they're going to hang on to that. And the question is, it's not about when should you move on. I think the question is, how much do you want this debt to cost you in your life? You know what I mean? Like, what if you're suffering? It goes from a place of like, hey, this is manageable, but now it's actually costing you good relationships, right, in your life, or that hang up or that offense or that anger you have towards somebody. Now all of a sudden it's causing you to be, might even be a group of people or an organization. Now all of a sudden you're angry towards them in a unhealthy, productive way, like Martinez was saying. That's just something that's in my head. What do you say, Chelsea? What does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I agree with that. I think
Like, I don't look at somebody that has debt and I'm like, you're an awful person. Like, hey, I've had debt before, right? Like, debt, but it's one of those, like, you know, do you want to pay the minimum or do you want to get beyond it? Both are fine with me because I love you regardless. You know what I mean? But it does cost more.
There's some people that just file bankruptcy and avoid it.
Yeah, that's, you know what? You're exactly, you know, like in the sense of like, yeah, like, hey, I'm just going to, you know, of course, depending on that is, maybe that is the healthy move, right? Maybe there is a level of like, hey, I'm never going to get beyond this. I have to truly wipe this clean. I can't keep holding, you know what I'm saying? Like that, because there's a restructuring. You know what I'm saying? In business, there's a restructuring.
Is bankruptcy in human terms, is that a form of, is that suicide? Is that what bankruptcy?
No, I would say it's a form of avoidance.
It's a form of avoidance, which, you know, some people look at avoiding things, well, in different ways. So yeah, I don't. I've read and heard where people, you know, back in the day, you remember Kevorkian or whatever used to kill people just because they were in so much pain. They call it being humane or something of that nature. So, you know, the world looked at it as suicide, but, you know, so I'm like, bankruptcy, what would that be equivalent to? But anyway.
Okay, look at it as a debt forgiven. And
there you go.
And so you're forgiving that debt that has came through her. I mean, we acquire debt ourselves. Some are self-induced, and some were unavoidable. Like, I was in an accident. A car hit me 25 years ago. I acquired a major medical debt. I didn't go say, hey, I want this credit card so I can have a bunch of debt.
Right.
No, was, I didn't ask for that debt. Now, if I go take a line of credit out somewhere, I'm asking for that debt. And
that's
so
good.
How much so I see what you're saying, Jason, that how much you're going to spend. So, but bankruptcy is a form of what you're doing is forgiving that debt. You know, we talk about Calvary. We had a written ordinance against us of debt, and so it cleared the debt. And so, if you clear the debt, and this is, I have an input on this. You know where I'm going to go with it. So,
praise the Lord.
Go there, Lucian. Go there.
Well, I did have something to say, but my mower wasn't started when we started the clubhouse. So, so help me God. My daily verse was peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives, do I give it to you. Let your hearts not be troubled, neither let them be afraid. Now, so when y'all first started the conversation, I thought about this, Psalms 19:14. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in my sight. I think how we deal with this process, going back to the original thought of this conversation, is your pattern is what you're meditating on a daily basis. Whatsoever things are true, honorable, just, pure, commendable, things of excellence, worthy of praise, think on these things, and the God of peace will be with you. So I think that's a pattern, and there's people, and I agree with all these conversations, is this debt we acquired is some kind of self-induced because it's all we meditate about. All I think about is the hurt. All I think about is what happened to me. And so, therefore, there's no peace in your life. But sometimes we have to reach out to a bankruptcy is a form of desperation. And sometimes we just have to get desperate. I've got to do what I've got to do.
That's good.
That is good.
To have peace and relieve this debt, because this debt is a weight in my life, and no matter what I got to do, I got to set the weight that is hindering me from what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. I come that you might have life and more abundantly.
Go ahead, sir.
God had no intentions for you to live a life of strife, live a life of negativity, live a life of causing division. He wants you to be happy because I want the next person to be happy. I want my happiness to be contagious.
So, Lucian, I love everything you just said, because what I get from it is, and this is just me, is that you by whatsoever things, thinking on these things, the good things, you're creating a baseline of performance in your life that, because listen, in this world, pain is coming.
Oh, it's inevitable.
It's inevitable. And so the thing about it is, because you have practice, because you have purpose in your mind to think on these things that are pure, think on these things, to be, kind of like in the spiritual phase throughout this practice. What happens is, when you do get pain, it hits a cushion of performance that that is absorbed by this lifestyle that you have lived. I mean, it's not that it doesn't hurt, but the thing about it is, if you weren't practicing, the peace and thinking on these things that are right and giving your heart to God and that kind of thing, then that pain is going to hit on a solid rock surface, or whatever. It's going to hit on the surface that's not built for pain, and therefore potentially magnify the pain that you're going through, because you haven't prepared your mind for it. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And I love the debt analogy, Jason, because what happens with debt on a daily basis?
It accrues. It grows.
It accrues. You are, every day is interest added to the debt.
I actually have a question for Chelsea, if that's okay.
Of course, come on.
So I want your perspective on this.
Okay.
Because and again, I just want to explain kind of how, because I love this conversation, because it's making me think about even myself, and making sure that I maintain emotional health like I would want to maintain financial health, right? I want to be a vessel full of love, compassion, mercy, and not a vessel that is empty and even in debt, so to speak. So all that being said, going back to that analogy of, hey, you can make minimum payments or you can really make large payments, because what you want to do is go towards the principal, not the interest. I think the interest, that's those things that are being charged to us. And like some people, they're going to deal with the symptoms, but not the sickness, right? They'll deal with the interest, but not the principal. And I just want to, maybe your perspective, I know as a living, you help counsel people through hurts and trials and emotional just devastation.
Sure.
So what are those, like, if that's the analogy, how would you say, in a subjective manner, or maybe just now thinking about it, some of the people that maybe do better as far as they get better results or they find more healing versus those that maybe are still hanging on, what would you say are those factors that make that the payment you put towards the emotion bigger or smaller? Like what is that payment in a counselor's perspective, you leading people to that? What would that look like?
Oh, that's a good question. I think there's multiple answers to that.
Sure.
I think the biggest one is just like, my client has to be ready to face the issue and face the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the solution is just as uncomfortable as the issue, because the solution often involves our own work.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, if somebody has wronged you, you're having to face that. You're having to let go, forgive. You're having to, all those uncomfortable things, have tough conversations,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it boils down to, like, they just have to be in a place that they're ready. And I hope that's not too much of a complimentary answer.
No, because this is a very nuanced. I mean, I don't even know that there is an answer. I just was curious if I were to set that up, because I think what we're trying to do, which again might not be even a right thing to do, but quantify that which is subjective. Try to find because you are right. There is, like, for instance, where's the balance between them being ready and the ability of the like, in other words, they have to be ready, right? And then there's also that level of, you went through training in order to guide and lead and persuade them.
Help them get ready.
So there's that nuanced balance of, it's almost like I'm seeing in my head, they value something, you value something, and you're trying to help make an exchange.
Right. Yeah. And I think that would look like, again, see that it's tough. It's tough because it goes back to the way that you help them get ready is providing, safety, providing rapport. So having a relationship with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, Jason, if you were hurting, if you were upset at something, Joe Blow off the street could not walk up and be like, dude, you just need to get over it.
Right. Who are you, Joe?
Right. Sorry, that was the only word that could come to my mind. But, they couldn't walk up to you and be like, just, you need to get over it. Like, stop sulking, stop, self-harming, stop doing these things. It would be different if, like, your wife or your father-in-law or your best friend or whoever came up to you and said that. So I think it's your relationship and the safety that you provide somebody in going into the healing journey. Because really, it's a process.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely.
I love this conversation. Just thinking about the pain or the hurt. Obviously, as shared before, there's different pains and different hurts. For example, someone being offended or someone doing something wrong, and maybe in a relationship that's different. I think potentially than someone experiencing ongoing trauma that makes them, like the young ladies that were, for example, kept as sex slaves in Pennsylvania years ago by that guy, and they escaped through whatever. So there's some trauma there and pain there that is going to need some nourishing to take care of them. And so there's that different type of pain. But then, as it relates to individuals, we mentioned debt. Okay, well, the people who are in debt are people who understand the responsibility of that. These are people that are open for business. So, their level of dealing with debt might be different, but the thing about it is, at the beginning, they understood what they were getting into. Mm-hmm. And so they knew the terms, and so they knew when it needed to be paid off. And for you not to know what the terms were, to sign the documents that you wanted to be, yet that you accept full responsibility of that, then to say, well, hey, I'm going to be late, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that, oh, by the way, to avoid this debt that I agreed to get into in the first place, I'm going to go bankrupt. Guess what? In my opinion, this, that's not being a responsible person, And so why get the and so those people that I'm just pointing that out as to show that there's these people walked into it knowingly that they were going to be in debt, And so all I'm trying to say, there's different types of debt. There's different types of people that are paying. And specifically, be different expectations that are required of them.
Uh-huh.
Like, for example, let's take people that are unsaved or don't know the God, that don't know God versus those that are in church. Now, for those like outside the church, there is a level of there's no really for those people. There's debt forgiveness. Or you know you're more merciful because like they don't understand. But when we come into the body of Christ, there is a certain level of expectation that it's expected, you know, because you know we're different soldiers now, right? We got a different way of handling things, and so all I'm trying to say is like I think like when it comes to the body of Christ, the Christian believers, there should be a pattern. And that pattern should not have you just languishing in debt for 30, 40, 50 years. And there should, you know, and our form of bankruptcy is not a case where we run away from our debt. No, we look debt straight in the eye and we're like, okay, this is how we're going to deal with it, you know, and we're responsible, if that makes sense. And so like, you know, Chelsea, you asked me like, well, Martinez, what would your pattern? What would you believe? Well, as it relates to the believer, you know, it is obviously, you know, if you're in pain, if you forgive that person, and you forgive that person, and you don't take it personally, and you move forward, and in fact, you say to your God, and you have to say this to yourself. You have to say, "Thank you, Lord, for this opportunity. Thank you for the pain," because you know you know it was there for a reason. It helped you get wiser. It helped you move forward. And the thing about it is, what did Joseph say when he was in pain by his brothers? Joseph said when he eventually revealed himself to them, he said, "Hey, don't think nothing of it. What you meant for bad, God meant for good. It was for a reason." And so, like, I think children of God, when we go through pain, it's for a reason. It's for God's in control of that. You don't charge it to your debtor. You charge it as a learning experience, and like God had me here for a certain reason, and you move forward. Because if you don't, then you increase the likelihood for years of, you know, not being a productive person that you want to be, and or you actually could hurt that person who actually hurt you, and that's not who you are, if that makes sense. You know, if Joseph took his authority and then lashed out to his brothers who paid him, that would have messed up his whole trajectory of his bloodline. You know.
Sorry. I was just going to say, you know, something kind of interesting about that. And again, like I said, I think it's interesting to layer something over top of another issue to see what correlates. So like, it's interesting that we, you know, at least for me, this is just my train of thought right now, layering finance over top of emotions, but understanding there is emotions in the finance. Because like, for instance, one thing that I think there's two factors that play a role in both of these scenarios. Number one is desire, but number two also is understanding. So like, for instance, I know that there are some people, like I've counseled different people over the years where they had hardships and they were just trying to get through it. They were actually trying to be responsible by taking care of it themselves. And without knowledge or understanding, they locked themselves into one of those day rate finance, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't know what they signed. They just thought, oh, I just need enough money to pay this deal, and then I'll pay it back in a week or two. And then what happens is, well, I've only got this much to pay on it. And all of a sudden that thing just snowballs. The next thing you know, the debt is more than the actual principle. And it's like, oh my God. But again, do I think they had the wrong desire? No, but they didn't have the understanding. So like, I think what happens is, I think even sometimes like with maybe relationships, people might get into relationships with good intentions, but they don't recognize maybe some of the red flags, or, you know, some of the things that understanding and knowledge would be like, whoa, you shouldn't conduct yourself like that, because there's pain that's going to come with that way of interacting, if that makes sense. You know, so I think there is a level, because you are right. There's some people, they're just like, hey, I don't care, I ain't paying it back. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a bad, that's an irresponsible. But I think there, unfortunately, sometimes we make really bad decisions in the name of trying to be responsible. But to your point, you know, when it comes to our walk with the Lord, you know, we have the following. We have the Word of God to inform us, and we have the Spirit of God to empower us. And the two agree, and they bring us into greater and greater revelation. So for instance, I can read the scriptures, but I can apply it in the Spirit. I can see that, like you just said, like maybe like, man, I'm angry at somebody. Well, wait a minute. The Bible gives me two clear directions on being angry with somebody. Okay. Or offended, right? I either overlook it, which I believe you need the Spirit to do, or you have an order, a conduct where, hey, I want to go to them in love to explain the situation. If that didn't work, I want to bring a godly friend, right? This ain't getting your posse to whoop up on somebody, right? There's the wisdom, you know, reading that scripture and understanding. Hey, because the goal in both of these situations is forgiveness. You actually can either take a left path or a right path, but they all converge back to, hey, there is forgiveness and life in this relationship, which is the goal. So yeah,
I like forgiveness as the year of Jubilee. You know, like when after so many years, God said everything returns to its rightful owner. You know, like it's like you know, you talking about debt forgiveness. You know, you talk about a different form of bankruptcy. It's not bankruptcy. It's actually just debt forgiveness. You know what I mean? Because that is like, I think part of like, and of course everyone has a plan until, you know, as Mike Tyson said, gets punched in the face, right? But, but you know, because you know, pains are different. But I'm thinking to myself, like, back what Lucian was saying, you know, creating that mindset, but also it's like, you know, you forgive and you don't charge that person who was the orchestrator of the pain to the pain. You know, you don't keep them on the hook. Mm-hmm. You know, no more than God kept me on the hook. Mm-hmm. And so the thing of the matter is, it's like it's. And I'm in the lab here. I'm just trying to figure this out. You guys are helping me, like finding a pattern for dealing with pain, so that, you know, and just because you find a pattern, by the way, of dealing with pain, doesn't mean that the pain is less significant, or it's not genuine pain, or your way of getting over it's not genuine. It's just like, it's saying, okay, you know, like the Bible says, there's a time to die. There's a time for this. There's a time for that. There's a time, you know, there's expected time. And I think sometimes, as it relates to the body of Christ, and even in our own lives, you know, we just spend too much time on something that should have been tabled, you know, some years ago, some months ago, weeks ago. You know, what is it that we're not getting? You know, and so I'm just trying to figure that out. You know, and I'm like, okay, it's just interesting to me. You know.
Well, you know, it is, and I'll give this analogy, and then maybe Chelsea could either she could either challenge it or validate it, either one. Because like you said, we're in the lab today. It's kind of interesting because the same muscle that you're going to use to get out of debt is the same muscle that you're going to use to stay out of debt. So for instance, what's that muscle? What's saving, right? I mean, that's what they tell you when you are really serious about making that move out of the realm of being in debt. Number one, you need to make a commitment to putting back X amount of dollars, whatever that is, whatever your ability to save is, put it in an account. And at the end of the month, all of that is your debt paying account. So you pay everything, it's separate, it's put aside, and that's actually the act of saving. Because what happens is you're paying that down. Well, all of a sudden, what happens when you don't have debt? Man, you keep flexing that same muscle, because now the same muscle that got you out of debt is the same muscle that keeps you out of debt. You're now building and accumulating. And by the way, in order to get out of it faster, the more you increase your capacity, aka your income, the faster your capacity, or the greater capacity it is to save. So I'm just thinking through these things of why, even though maybe it doesn't make sense on the front end, but it goes back to that idea of, growing as a person, doing the disciplines that make you better, because little by little, those things do pick up and accumulate. So like, for instance, emotionally speaking, what, things that I can do to maintain my emotional health, which again, for me, also has an underlying, when I say underlying tone, it has a core of my spiritual condition, right? So like I can start there and say, okay, hey, am I, in a state of, being, quote unquote, or resting, so to speak, in Christ? Am I, which, prayer, what Lucian was talking about, praying and meditating, those types of things that make me who I am. And then those activities that are helpful for emotional purposes, like journaling and reading, and these different things that little by little. In fact, I think those are maybe even some counseling activities that are recommended to people. Chelsea can either say yay or nay to that, but I'm just simply saying, what if those things that you do are also the things that are going to help you to have overflow, that when things do come up that typically would upset you, you're like, dude, it don't even bother me. Because I have an abundance built up against these kinds of things. These kinds of things don't indebt me. They don't bankrupt me anymore, because I've got such a buildup here that it can't even hurt me. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. You stole my train of thought, Jason.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. I'm just, listen, it's okay. I'm not going to be hurt. I'm going to let it go.
You've got an abundance, don't you?
But no, like, definitely, like, in the therapeutic setting, like, my goal, before we can even process, and I meant to say this a while ago and it left my mind, but before we can even process trauma and hurt and those things, I have to make sure the part of safety is that they have skills, so when they go home, they know how to handle this. Because sometimes it leaves things open, right?
Right.
And it's just in the same perspective, like, we have to have some good coping skills, which are those things that you were talking about: journaling, meditating, prayer. Either if it's writing a letter to the person that wronged you, but burning it because you probably shouldn't say those things. Just different outlets for our emotions, or the things that are triggering for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so those things are so important in the healing process, in the process of, like you were talking about earlier, Martinez, of letting go, or how do you get through those things. And yes, you're supposed to go to the person that wronged you, but you should probably have skills that are going to, like, tame your emotions before you go to them. Right?
Yes,
If you got
absolutely.
somebody up in arms, like if somebody approached me and didn't have the right, if I had wronged them and they did not approach me the right way, it's just going to cause more strife.
It is.
Because I'll be the first one that I'm very reactive. And you come at me, you got the wrong person, you know, and so I'm working on that. But that's just human nature.
It is.
And,
It is.
Right.
and it comes through hurt and it comes through those things. And so even though you're trying to let stuff go, like your body and your brain are programmed to respond to different situations differently. Right. So I think it's all, I completely agree with you, Jason. And I hope that I'm validating what your response was, because I 100% am on board with what you said. And so.
Well, that's awesome. And I think those are like, that is a very interesting point. Like, number one, there you have to have the right attitude going towards somebody. But I like what you said with when it comes to skills. Like, I'll give you a great skill. You know, me and Brittany, we've read different marriage books, things like, you know, we pick up little things that we want to do to bring into our marriage. Now, at the core, we love each other. Like, that's not even a question. We love each other. But there's also that level of, we've got to like each other too, which we do, until I do something stupid or, you know, but here's like to your point though, having skills, going back to that understanding, here's a skill that I have learned in marriage. Never make an accusation that is absolute. And what I mean is, like, one of the worst things you can say to somebody, specifically a spouse, is, you know, you always do this.
Yeah.
But because what you're literally saying is, now you've borderline gotten into character assassination. You're always da. Well, maybe it's just you're mad at that one instance, and maybe there was another instance back in the day, but now 2 instances have become always, and that person you just said that to, bro, they ain't open. They are closed off now. There is no communication.
Well, what I call that is inflammatory. You know, I think that what, you know, I call that not fight fair. You know what I mean? But you're exactly right. That you don't exacerbate it. Bottom line, you're right. You got to have the right skill set when you go to someone, and you don't want to magnify the wound. You know, I think the thing you want to do is bring. I think the number one skill, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the number one skill that we all have to have when it comes to dealing with pain is, you got to be able and willing to look the pain eye to eye. You know, if there's pain, you don't look the other way. You recognize where the pain comes from, and you acknowledge it, and you speak to that pain, and whatever form that is, whether it's going back to that person or writing a letter or whatever. But I think the person, in order to get through the pain, has to, like, deal directly with the pain, not acknowledge it. You know, what do y'all think about that? I mean, like, what can people deal with pain if they never acknowledge it, if they don't understand the source, if they don't understand where it's coming from? And can you get it? And if you can't acknowledge it and you don't understand where it's coming from, then is there a risk that it will come back later if you avoid it? You know, you think, hey, I'm good, but because I didn't recognize it and I didn't properly address it earlier on, he's doing this to me again, or she's doing this to me, or this is happening to me again because I didn't deal with it rightfully in the beginning.
I was going to say, can I interrupt just for a second? I love what you just said. And I think, just from my perspective, and in a clinical setting, this is what I teach my clients, is that no matter what, if you're trying to avoid it or not, you're always dealing with it. You're dealing with it in your relationships with people, how you treat people, how you talk to people, your reactions and responses to things that go on around you. You know, like, have you ever met those people that are like literally ticking time bombs that probably have, you know, maybe they don't really have anything going on that we can tell, you know, or maybe it's, hey, can I borrow that pen really quick? And then they just go off, you know, they're dealing with hurt. They're, you know, and I think it's looking at everybody. If we could have this perspective, it could probably change a whole lot of narratives. Is maybe looking at everybody like, hey, you know what? They're probably doing the best that they can right now in this moment. But back to what you said, though, we are definitely always dealing with it, even if you're trying to avoid it. There's still always going on.
So Chelsea, but I mean, what is that a skill to have? I mean, is that something that we need to do? I think, like, or in your counseling, do people, or take your counseling out of it, because to be honest, you might have to do what your job tells you to do, or but it might not really align with what you know that works. So, I mean, I don't want to limit you by what your job or guidelines that you've learned, but like, as it relates to dealing with pain, do you feel like we have to look it in the eye, that we have to address, we have to acknowledge it? You know?
Yeah, at some point we have to be ready for it to properly heal it and deal with it. Yeah. And in my own personal life, my own personal journey, the things that I have experienced and partially caused the hurt that I have, my therapist says that I have a gold medal in avoidance. And so
I think there'll be two of us standing on that gold medal stand. I mean,
she said, you are an Olympian. And I was like, I know. It's still.
I would be a 10-year gold medalist if that was the case.
Right, exactly. But
Chelsea, would you
definitely have to have conversations? Go ahead, sorry.
Uh-oh. You still there? Let's see if. He may have lost signal.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Do you think it's always inevitable that it will surface up no matter what, no matter how hard you avoid it?
Absolutely. And sometimes it's like the littlest, dumbest things. It always comes back.
I will say that I agree with that, because that's what we say in leadership, you know. And by the way, Chelsea, I love what you said about you know, really and truly, the word that I would give it is empathy. Like, trying to empathize with the other person to, you know, number one, hope for the best and the most good in them, to recognize, like, hey, listen, right, they, you know, whether this is happening, in other words, what they're doing to me is something that I don't think they would do in their best moment. This is their worst moment. So, and I want to recognize that I have my worst moments too. So I'm going to overlook, empathize, but here's the leadership trigger. The problem rarely is ever the problem. You know what I'm saying? When somebody starts getting, you know, snappy or whatever, it's like, something's going on. You know what I'm saying? Like, either I have accidentally done something, or, you know what I'm saying? Or something is, it might not even, and here's the other thing, might have nothing to do with you. I will say this, sometimes we're a little, harsh word, but we're a little narcissistic to think it's about us. Sometimes, man, they got a bad phone call. Had nothing to do with you.
Oh, yeah. That's one thing that they like, and I hate to go back to this clinical thing, but they teach us. One of my professors told me one time, and she was like, listen, she's like, dealing with people that have, like, personality disorders, you know, people that have had hurt and stuff, she said they're sometimes the hardest people to deal with. And you need to have this little emoji in the back of your brain that says, it's not about me, it's not about me. You know?
Right.
She said, because it's not going to be about you. They are going to lash out, and they're going to be very ugly and hateful, but it is not about you.
Mhm.
You know, like you did not cause that. You know, or maybe you did. I don't know. But I mean, you know.
Well, I think it might be like, unless you know something you did, why would you automatically assume that it's you? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that it won't, like you said, it's one of those, maybe something that you said was mistaken like that. I mean, that happens. But the other thing is, you know, you also don't want to, because I think sometimes at that point, you almost get into this situation where it's like, oh, you're going to be mad at me. Well, I'm going to be mad. You know what I'm saying? Now we're in this vicious cycle where versus, you know, somebody needs to be the strong wall that allows things to be bounced off of and be like, you know, they're just, anyways. Well, guys, I hate this. I've got a hard cutoff, but this has been an amazing conversation. Chelsea, thank you so much for being a part. We always love it when you're able to hop on and contribute.
Absolutely.
Like you just bring such a different angle to things that cause us to think differently, which is, you know, that's a part of your value add is, you know, what you're passionate about and what you're gifted in. So this has been awesome. I'm going to be really thinking about my relationships differently. Go ahead.
Can I add one thought?
Sure. No, you're good.
Something that's hit me. Oh, yeah, that's right. And it's because debt was our key term that we used today, that we got into. I go back to how I feel about forgiveness, and what helps me is, Lord, forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors.
Yeah, that's good.
At some point or another, I have created debt for someone else.
Wow.
And so I have to forgive that just like I was forgiven mine.
On that note, shut it down. That's so good, man. That is so good. It gives I tell you what you did. You just gave a context for that verse. And that's awesome. I love that so very much. All right. Well, guys, listen, have an awesome rest of your day. I want you to be blessed, to be great. We'll be back tomorrow, 7 a.m. And again, I want you guys to have an amazing day. We'll see you online, or if not, in the morning panel. You guys are rock stars. Love and appreciate y'all. And hopefully we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. Chelsea, have fun. Be safe.
Have a great vacation.
Thank you.
It's going to be powerful.
Great day, guys.